the Governor Christie endorsed the Obama education plan and said that he found it very much in line with his own plans. I don't know what's going wrong in this country, why we have a bipartisan agenda that seems to be focused on demeaning the people who do the work in the classroom and making children take test after test. The superintendent, Charlotte Mecklenburg, announced the other day that he's going to be piloting 52 new tests. He wants everything tested. Art, music, band, name it, and it'll be tested. And you wonder, will there be any time left for teaching? Or are we just trying to make kids hate school? Well, two myths that I want to dispel, and then I'll bring this to a close, is that one is our public schools are failing. Our public schools are not failing. Our public schools reflect our society, and our society is one that doesn't value education, that makes a big deal out of celebrity and making tons of money regardless of how it was made. And our society is reflected in what happens in our schools. Our schools have incredible diversity. We welcome people from all over the world. Many children don't speak English and are learning English, and their test scores are not very good. But that's not a reflection on their teachers. It's a reflection on our society. In this absolutely noxious movie called Waiting for Superman, which, by the way, is a piece of pro-privatization propaganda, that film, which was heavily subsidized by the Eli Growth Foundation, by the Bill Gates Foundation, and shown to legislatures across this country because of the money put into promoting it, that film makes the claim that 70% of our 8th graders are below grade level in reading. That is an absolute falsehood. It's not true. President Clinton appointed me to the National Assessment Governing Board, which oversees the federal testing program. And I can tell you that 25% of our 8th graders are reading below basic. That would be the equivalent below grade level. 25% includes children who can't read English and children with very profound disabilities. It's sad. It's not a national crisis. 70% certainly would be a national crisis, but it's not true. So that was just a hit job, and I would point out to you, if you look at follow the money, which I think is always a good principle, that money was funded by a very conservative billionaire who supports free market think tanks, vouchers, privatization, and certainly has no sympathy whatever for public education. The other untruth that you should understand, and it's complicated, is we keep hearing about how terribly we do on international tests. And you will hear from, whether it's from Jeb Bush or the president or any of the other politicians, they'll say to you, oh, isn't it awful, we're only average on the international test. And President Obama said in his State of the Union address, well, the last international test showed we're only in the middle. This is just awful. This is our generation's Sputnik moment. Well, I'm old enough to remember our generation's, or my generation's Sputnik moment, which was called Sputnik. And Sputnik went up in 1957. I happened to graduate high school in 1956. But I know what happened, that principals went around and pulled kids out of classes and said, you are now going to take physics, you are now going to take advanced algebra, and they made a real push to promote science and mathematics. And the first international tests were given in the 1960s. And guess what? The United States scored 12 out of 12. And then in the 1970s, we were in the bottom quartile in math and science. And in the 1980s and 1990s, we have consistently been in the bottom quartile. President Obama said something else in his State of the Union. He said, do not forget that we have the most productive economy in the world. We have the greatest inventors, we have the most patents, we have the most productive businesses, we have the most productive workers, and this is a great, successful, innovative, tremendous economy. Well, I ask you, as a matter of logic, how did all those kids who are in the bottom quartile of the math and science assessments end up creating the greatest economy in the world? I mean, clearly, there's a miss here. Those international assessments are not good predictors of the outcome of the economy, whether it will be successful 30 or 40 years from now. because if that were the case, we'd all be speaking Russian. But the Soviet Union's gone and we're still here. So I would urge you to take the international assessments with a grain of salt. I think they tell more about the diversity of our population and also about the tremendous challenges we face in trying to reduce the achievement gap from one end to the other. But the countries that have been most successful at doing this, the one country that has been most successful is Finland. Finland's the #1 ranked country in the world on the PISA exam, the one that was just released last December that the president was talking about. Here's where we're different from Finland. Well, obviously Finland has almost no diversity, but one other thing, a couple of other things you should know about it. Finland gives no standardized test. None. Zero. Zip. Not until a student applies to college do they ever take a standardized test. Finland has placed its bets on having the world's greatest teachers. And not by firing people, but by making teaching such a prestigious profession that young people compete to become a teacher. Once they become a teacher, they don't leave because it's a wonderful, honored, respected profession. They're trusted to make their own test and to make their own judgments about whether students are advancing. And I recently met one of the leading Finnish experts. And I said to him, well, how do you hold schools accountable? And he stopped for a minute and he said, well, in the Finnish language, there's no word for accountability. He said, now the closest would be responsibility, and we believe our teachers are very responsible. We trust them to do what's right for our students. Now, one of the great things about Finland is that they have a very small achievement gap from the worst performing to the highest performing students. It's very, very narrow as compared to ours, which is quite large. But the other thing, the other great advantage they have over us is, whereas so many of our children live in poverty, way over 20%, it's 20% on its way up to 25%. Finland has almost no child poverty at all, it's under 3%. So what they have done is to recognize that you can't fix schools without improving society. What we have done is we now have this corporate reform movement that says, forget about poverty. Poverty is an excuse. Poverty doesn't matter. You can take desperately poor kids from the worst circumstances, and if you put them into a boot camp, they will be just fine. And so we can not pay attention to all these ills of society. I think that's wrong, and I think that we know from about 100 years of social science that schools and society are reflections of one another, and particularly the schools reflect society. So we must do something, we must take steps to improve the lives of children. We should pay attention to programs birth to 5, and in a state like Florida where you have such a reactionary governor and reactionary legislature, probably you're doing nothing about those critical years, and this is not going to be good for the kids or the families or the schools. But where families are doing their part, the schools do very well indeed. And you can't ignore the role of the family. The role of the family is crucial. So if the day comes when you can elect a wiser, more compassionate, more intelligent governor and legislature,